The views and opinions expressed in the following program do not necessarily reflect the policies and the position of Now You Know.
Good evening and welcome to Viewpoint. Together with experts and newsmakers, we'll make sense of the week's biggest issues and stories. I'm Barnaby Lo. In tonight's conversation,
Victory, said Education Secretary Leonor Briones on the first day school was back, during a year that has been plagued by crisis in both health and the economy. The early claim to success, however, was almost immediately followed by a barrage of negative reports and criticism, from faulty and unstable internet access for online classes to errors in basic education modules. DepEd officials say they're ready to address the challenges of what they've described as a blended type of learning for public school students. But lawmakers and critics say there's plenty of room for improvement, not just in the current mode of education, but in the country's education system as a whole.
all right, good evening once again and welcome to Viewpoint. Welcome to all our viewers on Facebook. Tonight we will be talking about Philippine education, which, as you know, is a very important and timely issue right now, especially during this time of the coronavirus pandemic as well as economic crisis. And tonight we will be doing the show a little differently. We're going to have back-to-back interviews. We're going to be interviewing three people who are very much involved in the education sector here in our country. Later on, we'll have Alliance of Concerned Teachers Partylist Congresswoman Franz Castro, and then after Congresswoman Franz Castro, we will have Undersecretary of the Department of Education Nepomuceno Malaluan. But first up, we have the chairman of the Committee on Basic Education at the Senate, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, rather. I'm sorry about that, Senator. Good evening and welcome to the show, Senator.
Thank you, Barnaby, for inviting me to your show. Gandang gabi sa ating mga listeners and televiewers.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us on
Thank
Saturday.
you for inviting me.
Really appreciate your time. And as I've been saying to you, very nice background, very apt.
Thank you. It's supposed to be a library, Dartmouth Library.
Yes, very apt for our topic tonight. So we have about half an hour with you. So let's get down to business. You've been talking all week, of course, about issues about the school opening last Monday and all these other problems and challenges that we are facing right now in the particularly yung sa public education sector po natin. Now, a few days ago, you said that we can probably only claim partial victory. Kasi we all heard DepEd Secretary Liling Briones say on the first day of school na it's a victory that we are able to open classes during this time of pandemic. Now, 1 week na yung nakalipas, ano? So are you still of the same opinion, or with what you've seen, has your opinion strengthened, or parang do you feel like you've made a judgment too early and parang okay naman?
Well, in this school opening, Barnaby, it's everyone's business, no? Meaning the parents need to prepare, the school need to prepare, our teachers need to prepare, so everyone's preparing. But one of the most important components here at this time is internet connectivity and access, because distance learning requires additional support. And this additional support can come in the form of online learning. And different LGUs have undertaken and launched their own modality of supplementing DepEd's distance learning. So just to give you an idea, the pinaka-basic dito is the modules. The modules will be distributed to everyone, all 23 million kids. And all 23 million kids will have modules. The modules is designed to help the students self-study. So meaning they read it, they should be able to understand it and learn at the end. However, some LGUs launched their own online streaming. Like in Valenzuela, we have our own what we call Valenzuela Live, in which the teacher they teach subjects through Facebook Live. So live sila nagtuturo to help the student understand further. And this is where the problem came in, because when I inspected some of the homes of our students, maraming mga students naglalag, hindi makapasok, putol-putol. And it's disappointing because if our telcos were ready to support this and infrastructure is there, and the telcos have rolled out enough infrastructure to help our students, it will be perfect sana, because you have modules and then it's being supplemented by online learning. So that's why I said it's partial victory, because yes, we have distributed the modules. We've opened the school with enough preparation, but the internet connectivity was the missing link. If we had that, then it was a complete victory.
Pero hindi lang sa students, no? Hindi lang on the part of the students, because we've seen pictures of teachers as well trying to
trying
to get
correct.
signal, raising their phones. One teacher said she was on her laptop, but then she had to switch to her phone because hindi masagap ng laptop niya yung signal. So it's both ways.
Correct. And in both ways, you're absolutely correct, no? Because the teacher is as important as the learner. In fact, the teacher is the one delivering the modules, making sure that the child learns, and then eventually assess whether the child is indeed learning or not. So you're absolutely correct. No, it's equally important also for the teacher. That's why, from a holistic standpoint, I cannot claim complete victory, because that missing link, of internet connectivity was the missing link, was lacking in that victory. And hopefully in the next few months, I know for a fact that everyone is still adjusting the first week and then probably the second week, but in the next few months, the telcos will step up and support our education necessities.
So ang sinasabi mo, Sen, this problem is more of parang hindi naman kasalanan, but this is more on the telco's end and not on DepEd's end.
Yes, that's my analysis here, and that's why another very important component of this distance learning is the TV broadcasting, TV and radio. And the divisions were given flexibility to launch their own local radio, but DepEd has their own national radio, national TV programming, wherein the student can follow what is required of him or her to be able to learn. So DepEd has a list of different channels that the student can switch on and follow, and then the time slots, the subjects are all listed there, and the student will just watch and watch the program, and then refer back to his or her modules.
Pero if that's the case, do you also see deficiencies coming from the DepEd? Because all throughout the week we have been seeing all over social media, modules, learning modules with errors. And the DepEd has said na some of them are not theirs, some of them are from private schools, but some of them are theirs. So parang very, very striking ito because I don't know, but for me is parang, are we seeing this just now because we're all very involved in the way we're educating the kids right now? Pero actually, dati pang problema yan. Do you think?
That's a very good observation, Barnaby. In fact, there were some complaints about that. some allegations about they call it sick books. If I don't know if you came across this term, but they call it sick book because it contains a lot of wrong information, wrong data, some as trivial as wrong spelling. And that has been the allegation and the complaint of many of the education advocates. And this time around, I think because of the focus on content, no? Because right now, what's important also is making sure that content, because the modules are very new. We only launched those self-learning modules during the time of pandemic. And because those modules are new, the focus is on those modules. But then again, it's early to determine whether those are isolated cases because the modules, Barnaby, we have to also discuss this. So the modules are designed by divisions, no? Hindi siya centralized. So for example, in Valenzuela, we designed our own modules based on the competencies as required because the competencies are universal nationwide. But the modules, the way you teach, the way you deliver, depende na yan sa mga divisions. And ang assumption natin doon, the team in your own division, for example, Valenzuela divisions, are qualified. In fact, they have their own quality assurance team. No? So all divisions, all 200 plus divisions in the Philippines, they have their own quality assurance team, meaning nothing will come out without being quality assured. But again, no, sometimes mayroong mga nakakalusot, no, and again, it's too early to tell now whether those are isolated cases because I haven't. Those are just came out the media pero wala pang analysis.
Tanong ng iba is parang hindi daw ba masyadong minadali? Kumbaga, hindi pa prepared and parang we're going into a war unprepared.
I don't agree with that because, for example, in Valenzuela, again, sorry, Barnaby, keep going back, no, because that's my hands-on, on-the-ground experience. Valenzuela is my laboratory and my hands-on experience for information. Wala naman kaming ganun na detect, no, na maling information, maling data, or we haven't received any complaints about that. The only complaint is really internet connectivity. But in terms of the module content, wala naman. So meaning there are probably areas that have those content issues, and I would say those are probably isolated cases. That's why we need to analyze and investigate. Because ang process ng DepEd sa local, meron silang quality assurance. So that quality assurance person should be functioning so that these type of errors will not happen.
Okay, so let's leave it at that we should investigate that. At least you say that we should at least look into it, no?
Correct.
All right. What about your assessment of how teachers are doing? I mean, aside from connectivity issues, which, of course, that's not their fault anyway, right? But teaching distance learning versus teaching in the classroom are two totally different things.
Wow.
I would imagine, you know? So, pero noon pa man, kahit yung sa classroom, meron na tayong, kumbaga may deficiencies na kasi yung quality of teaching natin. And I think meron 2018, program for, yes, PISA, yes. PISA. And out of 79 countries, we are lowest in comprehension, second lowest in science and math. And I think there's a World Bank study as well where our teachers were not able to answer more than half of all the questions.
Yeah, that's true.
So meron na tayong inherent na competency problem sa teachers natin. So paano pa kaya how are you assessing?
That is my worry. In fact, I spent a lot of time talking to experts about distance learning and the self-learning modules. It's really my biggest worry because I know for a fact, even with face-to-face, we have quality issues, no? And we have outcome issues. Case in point is the PISA results in 2018. Well, it came out 2019, but that exam was administered 2018. And that's why the goal now, Barnaby, is for the students not to regress. Because if we keep our classes closed for a long time, and you know this because you have a child, our children will forget what they've studied. And the longer we keep it closed, the longer they will forget. And the longer it will be very difficult for them to keep up. The effects of that will be dropouts. A lot of students will get frustrated and say, magtatrabaho na lang ako. I'll just help my parents in the rice field. So mangingisda na lang ako. Hindi na ako babalik mag-aral. And we will have a generation of dropouts. And we don't want that to happen. Second is inequality. The kids who can afford online learning in the private schools, they will continue to learn. And they will continue to gain knowledge. But our public schools students will now regress and will have a problem in keeping up with those children who took up online learning. And we don't want inequality to happen because inequality will result to many, many social problems. So the goal here is to teach as much as we can, and hopefully our children will not regress. And I think they will not because of the design of our modules, the supplementary programs that we are launching, TV programs and radio programs, and also online for some LGU. So with the combination of all these, and the fact, and the parents also, no, the parents will play a very big role. No? If they will discipline their children to study and to take this seriously, then I'm very optimistic that our children will not regress and drop out.
So, in other words, you're okay with with our students at least learning something, even if they're not learning all of what they should be learning, if they're in school, for example, physically in school.
Correct.
Some are saying, why not just skip this entire school year if they're not learning as much as they should be learning when they're in school?
Yeah, but Barnaby, again, no, if you skip the entire school year, this is a time of uncertainty. We don't know when the vaccine is coming out. It can come out next month, come out 1 year from now. We're talking about a year of just staying at home and not doing anything. Just imagine a lot of our kids will probably regress and will not go back to school anymore because of difficulty in catching up. So we don't want that to happen. At least with what we are doing right now, the cognitive skills of our students will not regress or will not go down. We will continue to stimulate their learnings, their interest in school. Interest and stimulation in learning is also very important because that's where they become enthusiastic, and enthusiasm is very important in learning also. So with this, it's not, I cannot claim that it will be perfect, definitely, but definitely it's something that our children can hold on and continue absorbing new things and new subjects to enhance their cognitive skills.
Mm-hmm. So obviously, there are a lot of issues that need to be addressed. As a lawmaker, as chairperson of the Senate Committee on Basic Education, what can you do on that side of yours in order to address all these issues, and probably not just issues during this pandemic, but just general issues in our education system? I know you already suggested fully implementing the Magna Carta for public school teachers. I mean, what does that even mean, and how is that going to help, especially in this time of distance learning? And what are other measures that you as a senator and you, everyone in Congress can do to help manage the situation in our education system right now?
Well, one of the most important powers of Congress is budget, no? And to make sure that budget is being channeled to what is important in time of pandemic, in this time of school opening and teaching our children. So what we will assure our teachers and parents that there is enough money, there's enough funds to conduct distance learning. And this is also important for the confidence of our teachers, because our teachers are the one going out. The teachers are the one going to deliver the modules. In fact, it's now becoming an issue. I heard in Ilagan, Isabela, there were 11 teachers who contracted the coronavirus immediately, in the first week. 10. So my point of matter there is our teachers are our frontliners, and we have to make sure that our teachers have the confidence that they can teach, they can go out, and the government will be there to take care of them. And that's our job, to make sure that funds are there for them to tap whenever it's necessary. The second is to make sure also that funds are not wasted. And part of our job is to make sure that the meager, we're fighting for funds, especially right now, we're fighting against COVID. And we want to make sure that education will not be left behind, even under COVID. And with the meager funds that we're fighting for, we want to make sure that also the funds are spent efficiently and wisely. So that's our job right now, because this is pretty much a short-term to medium-term warfare, as you put it. And enacting laws to address COVID is already too late. Now, laws takes years to enact. But what we can do right now is to make sure that funds are available and it's channeled to what is important in this distance learning modality.
Mm-hmm. Oh, speaking of funds, actually, the Department of Education has been saying na napakamahal daw na pag-print nitong mga modules na ito. So, it's unlikely that they can keep up printing all these modules. And in fact, some teachers, I saw posts of public school teachers, they're spending their own money printing these modules, ano? So, ang sinasabi ng DepEd, baka daw sa NCR by third quarter of the school year, they're going to be shifting into purely online learning. Do you see this as something that's viable? During the start of the interview, you were already saying na problema talaga yung connectivity issues.
Yeah, correct.
On the other hand naman, kung sinasabi nila na hindi kakayanin ng budget yung pag-print ng modules, so where are we gonna be? Second half of the school year and even beyond?
In a perfect world, there are no modules. Everything is done online. Everything is delivered by email. But we don't live in that perfect world, Barnaby. Even DepEd knows this because they conducted surveys. Only 40% of our school children have access to internet, and around that number also have access to some form of gadget. So even though you give them a USB, and then the USB will contain all the modules there, it's another problem how they will look at that USB or the files in that USB or access that USB. There are places in our country where literally there's no access to internet. So the basic item or the basic modules that will have that they can access is the self-learning modules, no? Because that's very basic. You just print it and you give it away. But maybe in some areas like say Makati or Pasig, where internet access is strong, or our students there have access to gadgets, maybe they can do that. But DepEd is absolutely correct. No, printing is quite primitive now, no? And a lot of the private schools, they don't even use textbooks anymore. Everything is done through online or through digital. But reality will set in that not everyone has that luxury of accessing their study materials through online.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we're running out of time, but I do want to ask you a couple of questions not related to the issue of education, and I hope you don't mind. But you're in the Senate and you are observing what's happening in the House, the tussle for the speakership position. And just a couple of days ago, or was it? No, it was just yesterday that President Duterte called for a special session. Now, of course, you're seeing what's been happening in the House, and it's a whole drama. But do you think, and you're going to be affected, of course, your budget deliberations in the Senate. We've heard Senate President Tito Soto say na whatever the congressmen say, apektado yung budget deliberations sa Senate.
Yeah.
Now, with this special session, is it all good? Do you feel confident that it's
Wow, that's well, the special session is meant to cover lost ground, no, or possible lost ground. Because looking at our calendar, Barnaby, next week is our last week. And the timetable for the budget is for Congress to transmit to us before recess, which is October 14. But since they suspended their session, we lost close to 4 session days. Meaning that, but every session day in budget is very important. So we lost 4 session days, and the only time that they can transmit the budget to us is already November 15, which is too tight because the Christmas break is around December 20. So we're talking about less than a month for the Senate to look through the budget. So, and I have to again emphasize on this. The 2021 budget, Barnaby, is probably the most important budget in recent memory or recent history because it's the recovery budget. We're all reeling from this pandemic. A lot of businesses closed down. A lot of people lost their job. The vaccine is not yet there. And the 2021 budget is meant to stimulate our economy by pouring a lot of money on infrastructure and health, meaning we build more roads, we build more government mandated infrastructure, and when you build, you hire more people. And then second is more health support. So in an event that this COVID will be prolonged, you have extra cash there to address that. So it's a very important, but it's not an ordinary budget, Barnaby. This is an extraordinary year, and the 2021 budget is an extraordinary recovery budget. So meaning, by hook or by crook, you really have to approve it on time. Hence, the president came out to stress that this is a very important budget. We have to approve it on time. It cannot be approved 1 day late or 1 month late. It has to be approved on time. So that's why he called for a special session, so to cover that possible lost ground in the deliberation of the budget.
Okay, so do you also have to have special sessions?
No, because actually we're in session right now. Congress unilaterally called off and suspended their session, but we're on session right now. We're deliberating. We continue to hear the budget of different departments. But what's important is for Congress to close their deliberation, approve it on third reading, and transmit it to us. And looking at the timetable, if they don't do that next week, there's a big possibility that the budget will be delayed. And we will not have a budget come 2021.
Okay, so you're saying you don't trust 100% that that's going to happen next week?
Well, with this special session, I'm confident that that will happen because the special session is meant to cover lost ground. Sans any political explosion, then we will. I think we can approve the budget on time this year.
Okay, sans any political explosion. Well, that's.
I'm being diplomatic and politically correct, Barnaby.
Because from what we've seen in the last, I have to say that we can't really predict what's going to happen next week.
Very difficult, very difficult. Next week will be exciting. I think next week will be exciting. Will be exciting, but I hope the excitement will not be a reason to delay the budget. Again, this is not an ordinary year. Kung in 2019 the budget was delayed. Okay lang 'yon, wala tayong COVID. We didn't even feel the delay. But this year, iba. No, and when if the budget will be delayed next year, we will definitely feel it because we will not see infrastructure, we will not see new roads, we will not see new hospitals, and that's a big problem for us in time of the pandemic.
All right, and on that note, we have to. I have like.
Bilis.
I
30
have
minutes is fast. Huh?
I mean, I have like a ton of questions. But that's really all the time that we have for tonight. So we hope to have you again on this show sometime in the near future. Thank you so much, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, for your time. And again, to our viewers, we're going to do our show slightly different this time around. We never take breaks on this show, but we will take a short break right now. And when we come back, we will have Alliance for Concerned Teachers Representative Franz Castro. So stay tuned. And we are back on the show. You are watching Viewpoint on the Facebook page of Now You Know. We are still discussing issues of education, public school education, especially in this time of the coronavirus pandemic. And right now, we have live with us via Skype ACT Teachers Representative Franz Castro. Good evening, Congresswoman Castro.
Hi, good evening, Barnes, and to our viewers.
All right, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time on a Saturday evening.
You.
Okay. All right. Medyo nakulangan tayo sa oras sa overtime konti si Senator Win. Medyo na-carried away po kami. Pasensya na po. But I'll ask the same question, the first question that I asked Senator Win, because the first day of school opening, which was just last Monday, sinabi po ni DepEd Secretary Liling Briones na she was already claiming victory just because, the government was able to open classes even during this time of the pandemic. And also there's an economic crisis. So very extraordinary time, pero nakayanan po na mag-school opening. Sa inyo po ba, ito po ba sign ng victory?
Okay, so yung victory kasi, ang mas titignan natin yung ating mga stakeholders, di ba? Yung mga teachers, yung ating mga estudyante, yung mga magulang, kung tagumpay nga ba. So tama naman, tagumpay nakapagbukas tayo ng klase, bagamat ilang beses na itong naiurong, nabuksan natin despite dun sa dami ng problems that we have received for the first week ng implementation nitong class open. So tagumpay naman nabuksan, kaya lang ang dami talagang mga problema. So kung tatanungin natin yung mga teachers na constituents natin ay hindi. Hindi tagumpay dahil maraming mga kakulangan. Tama yung sinabi ni Senator Win, problema talaga yung connectivity. Kasi as if parang yung first day, parang ang mga teachers, mga students and parents, talaga sila, nag-venture sila or nagtutok sila sa online. Na sinabi ng mga teachers naman, karamihan or half of their students were able to go online lang. Tapos yung iba ay hindi. Kaya nga marami nga mga teachers ang emotional dahil nga doon sa naawa sila sa mga bata na walang pang data, walang pang internet, walang cellphone. Kung may cellphone man daw, iintayin muna daw nila yung nanay nila kasi nisi-share sila ng cellphone ng nanay na nagtatrabaho. So yun, yung modules, well, I have to I have to tell the truth. Yung modules na sinasabi ko, ina-expect ko self-learning kit talaga, Barnes. But when I see a module ng aking neighbor, kasi kanina medyo nag-tutor ako doon sa isang grade 5 students na nagpaturo ng divisibility rules sa math.
Naku,
Anyway,
nahilo ako.
when I look at their module, hindi pala siya module, Barnes. It is pag sinabi kasing module, kasi module writer ako eh. A self-learning kit na nandun yung explanation, nandoon na yung mga worksheet. Pero ang nakita ko, worksheet lang eh. So, sa totoo lang, worksheet lang yung nakita ko na nandoon. So, hinanap ko nga yung workbooks, or I mean the textbooks, kung meron. Sana mabigyan ng textbooks din yung mga bata para makapag-refer. Kasi kapag halimbawa, ito na lang example ko, no, grade 5 student na kung hindi maalam yung kanyang magulang, talagang iiyak siya, talagang mag-aaway sila ng magulang nila. And in fact, yung nangyari yun. Kaya nga tayo ay pumagitna at tumulong na tayo doon sa bata. Kaya sabi natin, talagang mahirap talaga itong new normal na ito, itong blended learning na ito. Sa tingin ng ating mga teachers ay hindi gaanong handa. So, hindi gaanong
Kasi
napaghandaan.
supposedly nga po, blended learning. So kung may problema man sa connectivity, kaya nga tinawag na blended learning, and that's why may mga modules, dapat kakayanin mag-self-learn. Pero ang sinasabi ninyo, hindi rin. Hindi rin
Hindi
siya,
rin, kasi hindi siya self-learning kit. Yung sinasabing module, that is only worksheets. Tingin ko worksheets kasi exercises lang yon. Pero yung explanation, how to, divisibility of 4. So wala namang explanation before that. How do we know that a number is divisible by 4? Wala doong paano ituturo sa bata yon. So you have to ask pa rin for facilitator, tutor, or the mother na maalam.
laki ng role,
So yun yung kita ko. Ha?
ang laki ng role ng parents, ano? But
Yes, oo.
pero let's face it, pag sa mga depressed communities, for example, or sa mga rural areas natin, ang daming uneducated or undereducated na mga parents. So parang how are they going to teach their children?
So, yun nga, Barnes, no, ng problema natin na kinakaharap ngayon dahil karamihan sa sitwasyon ganyan sa sinasabi mo na kung hindi magi-intervene talaga ang DepEd. Alam ba, katulad ko na public official, kung hindi magi-intervene, so walang mangyayari, no, at frustrated lang yung mga bata. So, sa connection, yung anak ko, grade 12 students yan dito sa public school dito sa Valenzuela. Frustrated din kasi yung live stream, tama yung sinabi ni Senator Win kanina, talagang yung connectivity ay not as very bad. Tapos, mapu-frustrate yung mga bata, sasabihin na lang ng teacher kasi, ay mga anak, i-record ko na lang ito ha, then i-send ko through your messenger, tapos saan yung titingnan o saan yung i-replay. So, wala yung interaction. Siyempre, mawawala doon yung interaction. So, ganun lang yung nangyayari.
So ano po yung suggestions ninyo para matugunan or ma-address itong mga issues na binanggit ninyo? Kasi si Senator Windy niya nasabi kanina, pero I heard him say earlier in the week, nagsuggest siya na baka pwedeng roving teachers. And then by groups of 5, mga ganon, yung mga estudyante. Si Vice President Lenny Robredo naman, she was suggesting baka pwede naman mag face-to-face classes in low-risk areas. And in fact, I read an article yesterday sa Time Magazine, Time Magazine or CNN, I think it was an article online, saying na in previous pandemics, in the early 1900s, nagkaroon po ng pandemic, and what they did in America was to hold classes outside. And it worked back then. So, yung mga ganun po ba nakikita ninyo na can work in the Philippine setting in this time na medyo mataas pa po yung bilang ng COVID natin?
Okay naman yung mga suggestion, yung mga learning hubs. Tama yan, mga 2 to 5 students sa mga learning hubs, the same level, so pwede yang magawa. Pero alam mo, Barnes, kapag good quality yung learning kit na sinasabi, yung self-learning kit sa mga bata, kapag good quality lang yun at talagang totoo na meron talagang mga instructions doon, kasi ang self-learning kit, parang yung teacher kasama mo eh. Babasahin mo na lang siya eh. Nagkakaroon ng instructions, rules, tapos yung examples, ganito. Baka makuha yun ng mga bata eh. So, yun yung talagang dapat dito sa panahon na ito. Dahil mataas pa ngayon yung wala tayong magagawa talaga kundi gumawa ng mga katulad ng halimbawa yung by groups. Meron naman yung ginagawa natin dati, yung magaling na estudyante nagtuturo doon sa mga bata na mag-facilitate, yung mga fast learner ba? Yung mga fast learner, pwede ring ma-utilize yun, lalong-lalo na sa community, may mga ate at kuya na pwedeng magkaroon ng group discussion. Yon, yung focus discussion. Na halimbawa, ngayong week na to, itong lugar na ito, itong subdivision na ito ay may mga ganitong mga bata, may mga ate at kuya, pwedeng gawin doon din yun na solution para sa ikatutuloy ng education.
So
So, yun.
sa inyo, safe naman po to be in small groups para sa mga estudyante.
Oo, tingin ko safe naman yung small group. Tapos, dapat continuous yung evaluation doon sa mga areas kasi may mga generally sa buong bansa, may mga low risk area din naman na hindi naman kailangang mag-module ang mga bata. Pwede rin naman silang group of 5 or maximum of 10 na pwede sa eskwelahan kasi basta yung eskwelahan ay kumpleto lang siya sa water facility, yung sanitation, yung physical distancing ay talagang magagawa. So I think mas mabuti 'yon kasi ang hirap nung ganito talaga na hindi face to face. Kagaya nga na sinabi kanina ni Senator Win na wala pa rin talagang papalit doon sa face to face with the teacher.
Parang suggestion po
Learning.
parang shifting sa mga schools na low risk areas. Is that what you're trying to say?
Oo, yun ang tama. Yung shifting, halimbawa, meron ding combination of face-to-face and a module. So, alam ba, yung Lunes para sa mga grade 1, tapos bibigyan sila ng module for the rest of the week. Tapos yung grade 2 naman para doon sa Tuesday. Tapos hanggang sa may mga gano'n, may mga shifting para hindi masyadong crowded sa eskwelahan. Pero yun ay para sa mga low risk at saka sa wala talagang kasi nahihirapan din yung mga ibang probinsya na sa module dahil nga ihahatid nila yun tumatawid ang mga teachers natin sa rivers, tumatawid sa mga rivers, umaakyat ng mga bundok. Kaya talagang pwede sa eskwelahan kasi sa community naman dito sa urban areas, masikip din naman yung community kaya dapat ibukas yung mga open spaces para sa mga learning hubs sa mga bata.
We're talking about the safety of the kids, but I think we should also be talking about the safety of the teachers. Nabanggit ni Senator Win yung sa Isabela, meron 10 guro na tinamaan ng COVID. And I think sa Bicol, may nangyari din ganon. Sa Cebu, may nangyari din ganon. Yung nag-distribute na modules, tinamaan ng COVID. Do you think the teachers are getting enough protection and are getting the right benefits? Because in effect, they're frontliners, just like our medical frontliners are frontliners during this battle against the coronavirus.
Yeah. Tama ka, Barnes, no? I think the government should focus din doon sa protection and safety and health ng ating mga guro. So sa mga nabanggit mo nga, before that, sa record ng DepEd, more than 800 yung may mga naka-contract ng COVID sa buong bansa. So before the opening of classes, kaya kailangan ito yung hinihiling ng ating mga guro, yung health screening for them, lalong-lalo na yung ating mga vulnerables, yung mga teachers nating may mga comorbidities, yung may mga diabetes, may mga hypertension at saka respiratory problems. So dapat merong health screening at eto nga sinasabi na nga natin, kahit nga sa House of Representatives pag pumasok ka doon, mag-test ka, sana meron ding ganon, especially now na may mga division na nagre-require sa mga teacher na pumunta sa school twice a week, thrice a week, without protection. Sa Davao yan, sa Davao. Kaya problema natin yan, Barnes. Kaya sana aside from yung talagang dun sa pagtuturo, yung mga module na yan, i-consider din yung protection ng ating mga estudyante at saka ng mga teachers. Ng mga teachers kasi kailangan ma-protectionan yung teachers kasi kapag hindi, paano na ang ating mga estudyante?
But is this something that you as a lawmaker in Congress can help with in terms of oversight function as well as lawmaking function?
Yes, ako, for example, we have filed several bills dito nga sa mga mass testing, itong internet allowance ng ating mga kaguruan, at yung syempre yung sick leave sa ating mga teachers. So, file po tayo niyan. At ito nga yung recently na-approve na baro na merong 165 more or less na billion na na budget. So binabantayan natin yung implementation niyan kung paano ma-implement. Tapos ito nga pinag-uusapan kanina yung budget ng 2021, may provision diyan sana talaga ilalaban natin yung sa DOH yung budget para dito sa mass testing, yung ating mga health infrastructure, siyempre protection sa mga workers, protection sa mga teachers at saka doon sa mga health workers. So yun, meron yang sa mga provision, mga amendments din sa budget na i-file namin later na related sa pandemic.
In its current form, yung national budget ng 2021, are you satisfied with the appropriations in the budget of DepEd? Because as I mentioned kanina kay Senator Win, DepEd has been saying na hindi kakayanin yung gastos sa pagprint ng modules. Hindi nila kaya i-sustain. So, kumbaga, ayun nga, may nag-suggest na from DepEd na in NCR, baka by third quarter, wala nang modules, completely online na. Kaya lang, may problem naman tayo sa connectivity. So, I mean, what can you do in terms of budgeting?
In terms of the proposed budget ngayon ng DBM for the DepEd, 2.6% lang yung in-increase from the 2020 budget, as if wala talagang pandemic, walang provision talaga doon sa mga modules. Baka kailangan pa yan ng mga supplemental. Kaya nga sa 2021 budget, sinasabi na naglalagay tayo ng amount para doon sa mga module para makumpleto talaga yung pagpiprint ng mga module at saka dito naglagay din tayo ng proposal para sa mga gadgets, devices ng mga teachers natin. So kung hindi dadagdagan ang budget talaga ng DepEd, talagang kulang, hindi natin talaga matutuloy itong blended learning at yung kalidad, especially yung kalidad, paano pa natin yun makukuha. So, kailangan talaga ng budget, Barnes. Napakahalaga yun. Lalong-lalo na ngayong pandemic. Kasi iba na ngayon yung paraan ng pagtuturuan Kaya talagang mag-invest ang ating gobyerno dito.
So, possible pa po bang ma-adjust? Kasi hindi pa naman approved yung budget. Pero at the same time, meron drama, konting drama, konti nga ba? But meron drama na nangyayari sa House.
Yes, with the special session, hopefully yung ating leadership maibalik yung dating may mga schedule naman na hindi pa yung mga departments na hindi pa nakapag plenary session. Ang DepEd nga hindi pa rin kaya worried ako Kaya yun, so doon kasi namin isasabihin yung mga amendments doon sa mga plenary sessions. Kaya kung walang plenary sessions, yung sinasabing small groups, walang sa karanasan natin, hindi naman yan na nagagawa. Maganda talaga, plenary para makita ng mamamayan yung ano ba yung inaano nating amendments or additional budget para sa kanila. So, hopefully, ang ating leadership sa Kongreso ay mag-open ng mind para ituloy natin yung deliberation ng mga budgets ng mga departments.
Okay, since we're on the subject of House events, House drama, if you would like to quote unquote the drama that's been unfolding in the House. What do you think of what's going to happen next week since meron pong special session? I mean, that's supposed to address issues of the national budget, of course. But do you think that this speakership row, do you think that next week we will see the end of it as well?
Well, ang daming mga magiging scenario, Barnes. So ine-expect talaga natin kasi ine-expect talaga yung change of or yung change of leadership by October 14. So dahil October 13, 14, 15, 16 yung sinabi ng pangulo na special session, baka may maganap talaga diyan na drama o may maganap talaga. Pero kami nga sa minority nakikiusap kami, sana tapusin na muna yung budget. Kaya nga before the special session proclamation ni President, meron na kami sa minority block na schedule para maituloy yung deliberation ng budget. Kaya sana nga walang mangyari kasi kulang pa rin talaga yung 4 days. Kasi almost a week na yung nawala sa amin dahil to sa drama na ito na kung naituloy lang ay sana tapos na kami by 14. So yun yung
So kulang po pala yung 4 days. So
I think
yun.
oo. I think kulang kasi ang lalaki ng malalaking department pang involved DOH, DPWH, DOTR. So malalaki SUC, CHED na napakadaming mga budget cuts diyan at saka yung mga tinitignan nating mga sobra-sobra naman sa ibang mga departments. Kaya yun tingin ko kulang nakikita naman natin hanggang anong oras kami nag-interpolate kaya talagang kulang.
So, okay. So, meron pong chance na ma-delay po talaga yung 2021 national budget and we will have to work on a reenacted budget early part of next year. You're not discounting that chance.
Yes, may chance na ganyan. Tama. Pwede rin mangyari yan or pwede rin mangyari yan sa 4 days na yan. I-maintain yung second reading yung ating leadership kasi tinapos na nila yung second reading, i-maintain yung second reading for the first 4 days and then on the last day magte-third reading na. So yun yung mangyayari, parang railroading na, sagasa na doon sa ibang mga departments kung na plenary man yan or enough ba yung yung pagbusisi So yun yung expect namin.
Railroading doesn't sound like an ideal scenario.
Yes, oo. Kasi tinitignan natin na magkakaroon na naman ng drama at the middle of the week. Kaya ina-expect natin na madidelay siya. Sana naman hindi. O kaya ang gagawin niya kagaya ng sinabi ko, yung 4 days na yan, di siguro 2 days impasse and then later on pagdating ng Friday third reading na siya. So dadalhin na siya sa Senado.
Mm-hmm. So, as a member of Congress, what do you think is the best for Congress next week? Is just to resolve budget, the 2021 national budget, and leave that speakership issue for after the recess, or would it be best if that speakership issue is resolved first, and then move on to the 2021 national budget?
Yes, sa amin sa Makabayan Block and as well as the minority block, mas gusto namin tapusin muna yung budget bago ulit pag-usapan yung speakership issue kasi madidelay kasi may mga timeline na hindi lang kasi sa Kongreso ang budget so House of Representatives dadalhin pa yan sa Senate, magba-bycam pa yan, kailangan matapos yan before the end of December. Kasi kailanganin na yan ng January. Kaya kailangan matapos na yon. So, pakiusap namin sa ating mga colleagues, lalong-lalo na sa majority, set aside muna natin yung ating problema sa speakership. Tapusin muna natin yung budget dahil ang taong bayan ay naghihintay para sa mga panggas para dito.
Okay, just one final question, just going back to the issue of education. Your party list came out with a statement saying that you are concerned that the problems that we're seeing right now could lead to dropouts. Can you expound on that? Bakit po pwedeng maging ganung kalala yung problema natin?
Oo, no. yung first week pa lang nakikita na natin yung mga frustration ng ating mga estudyante. Tapos sa mga magulang din, ito nga, yung mga kapitbahay ko nga sabing gano'n, at least ₱50 a day ang kailangan nila do'n sa data, sa isang bata, kung mag-o-online yung mga bata. Kaya kung hindi, matutulungan ng gobyerno ang ating mga teachers, ang ating mga magulang sa mga expenses ay problema talaga. So, talagang ano 'yan, kahit sa college, SUC, yun din yung demand nila, eh. Kailangan talaga yung connectivity na maayos, yung mga gadgets, otherwise talagang mag-drop yung ano, kasi ang dami ring mga pinagagawang rush, may mga requirements na pinagagawa na kung wala ang pamilya ng gano'ng mga gadgets ay laptop, printer, paano makakapag-submit si bata?
Oh,
Mapo-frustrate ang magulang, mapo-frustrate ang bata.
so in other words, it's an issue of cost.
Yes, definitely, it's an issue of cost, yan.
Mhm. Okay. Well, that's a big issue, especially in this time of economic recession. Yeah. So, but Congresswoman Castro, that's all the time that we have. I do have a lot more questions for you, Sana, but we have to move on. And for our viewers, thank you so much, by the way, Congresswoman Castro, for joining us again on a Saturday evening. Thank you so much for your time. To our viewers, again, we will take another short break, and when we come back, we will have Undersecretary of the Department of Education, Nepomuceno Malaluan. And we're back on Viewpoint. You are still watching us live on the Facebook page of Now You Know PH. And for the last part of our discussion on education issues in the Philippines amid the coronavirus pandemic, we have with us live via Skype DepEd Undersecretary Nepomuceno Malaluan. Good evening, Yusek.
Yes, good evening, Barnaby. I think one of our issues is the connectivity, and you're coming in choppy on my end. And so I think,
Nako.
yes, so it's on my end, I think. It's on my end.
It could be my end and your end, you know. And
Yes.
to think, Yusek, I'm already on fiber, and I'm sure you are at the very least on broadband connection. So let's start with that then. You know, the connectivity issues, because I had Senator Win and then Congresswoman Castro, and both of them right out the bat pointed out that the biggest problem is connectivity. So how are we dealing with that?
Precisely that's why we had no choice but to go on what we call blended learning, because while some of the private schools are on pure online learning, that is not possible in the Department of Education, given the coverage. We're covering as all over the country, and covering almost 22.5 million learners from kindergarten to grade 12 in various geographic settings. And that's on the infrastructure side. We know the connectivity issue, and this pandemic has brought that to the fore because of the need by all sectors for that. But on the other hand, it's also the capacity of the learners and the households. Ownership of gadgets are also a limitation. So, and if you compare the enrollment in the public schools versus the private schools, where nearly 100% of our enrollment last year, whereas in the private schools, we're now at a little over 50%. So there has really been a bigger non-participation for this year for the private schools. And aside from the probably the economic dislocation, because private schools is a paid education, unlike the public schools. The other one is because of providing for blended learning that involves a number of modalities for delivery, including through printed format of the self-learning modules. So that's how we're dealing with it.
Can you
But
walk us
certainly, yes.
Yes, Yusek, can you just walk us through this blended learning that the DepEd is implementing right now?
Well,
Because most
the
people right now, what they're seeing is either online or yung pong modules. Pero syempre, iba-iba yung situation in all parts of the Philippines. Um, in the simplest way, can you explain to us, para basic lang po, para maintindihan po ng mga tao, kung ano po talaga yung involved dito sa blended learning na ito?
Yes, I hope I'm coming in
You are.
clearly
Yes.
because we're choppy from my end. But walking through this blended learning, as you know, under normal situation pre-COVID, our learning delivery in the formal schools is designed to be done face to face in classroom setting. And in terms of learning resources, there are various learning resources that are available, including the textbooks, laboratory equipment, and other learning resources. But that is designed to have a instructional supervision and teaching by a teacher in, as I mentioned, in a face-to-face classroom setting. Now we go or are compelled to do this on remote learning, where the teacher is not available to supervise the learning process with constancy and through face-to-face supervision. So you need to find a way to substitute that direct and constant instructional supervision by a teacher, and that is why it is called a self-learning module. It is meant to assist a learner alongside the textbook with a guide to the lesson, as well as the activities that they need to do. That is supplemented, of course, by a communication mechanism, not necessarily an online synchronous mechanism like this, but any form of communication where they can get feedback, uh, answer questions, and so on. And then the students return activity sheets that the teachers are able to evaluate and assess whether learning is happening. Not just activity sheets, but also a portfolio of outputs that can assist the teacher to determine whether learning process goes on. Of course, if there is an online platform that is allowed able to do a an interactive and synchronous interaction like this, then that can simulate a classroom setting because they can do it at the same time. They can look at the same material at the same time. Students can ask questions. Teachers can ask questions. That's an ideal scenario, but unfortunately, that is not available now. Our self-learning modules that is in the printed form are also being made available in digital format, so it can be downloaded online, and once it's with you, then you can use it offline. And we have what we call the DepEd Commons. It's a site where our students and teachers can go to, and we were able to arrange for this to be zero rated or whitelisted. In other words, that students will not incur data charges, but they can download in digital format this printed mode, this self-learning modules that are otherwise in printed form. And we are also converting this into a certain program that provides some interactive uh, aspects of such digital format of the self-learning modules. Now, the other one last complement is we are also producing educational videos that can be broadcast in on television, whether terrestrial or on cable, and also transforming the self-learning modules into uh, radio-based scripts that certain that are able to broadcast in certain areas, on select areas only, by radio. So to assist the learners in the learning process. So it's quite a very challenging situation of trying to have what you might say is are all second best alternatives to face-to-face learning in classroom setting.
Just one clarification, Yusek. So pagka online po ba, it will depend on the teachers and the students, the quality of their connection on that day, and pag hindi po okay, so pwede silang mag-decide na, okay, we're not going to do online today. And tomorrow, if the connection is good, then we'll do online today. Parang ganon. So, parang wala akong consistency.
Well, the teachers have a weekly learning plan, and the teacher is already informed through a profile of the students. We're thinking about it in the macro level where there are 22.5 million, but if you go down to the learners across grade levels and from kindergarten to grade 12 nationwide. But at the micro level, these students are organized per grade level in schools by classes. Some of these are by sections and so on. So you're actually thinking of a teacher with a certain set of students that is under them. In early grades, there's one teacher for every grade level, but in higher grades, there are also subject teachers. Only one subject, for example, handling one subject for a grade level, and sometimes it's a number of sections, like 4 sections that you're handling, teaching only one subject. In other words, you can bring down this macro number to its micro level of a classroom, or not a classroom, but a class and the teacher setting. And the teacher will have a profile, and she would know which among the students are capable of doing online learning and those that are not. So you can imagine a class if there is some online platform where there will be others not able to join, and that's already known by the teacher. Now, that a different problem is when you are in an online facilitated program, but you get dropped in the process. So that's another issue. But in other words, in the blended learning, it's not just a blending of modalities, but within a class there could be a differentiation in the learning delivery that is being employed by the teacher. Now, there will be an adjustment period and a settling in period to see what is the most appropriate form that a class will ease into in the subsequent weeks and quarters. And we hope that there will be rationalization that will happen as we go along, including, for example, the dependence on the substitution of the printed format or printed modules with a digital format, not necessarily online, but just a digital format, and those that can receive instruction not full time but only complementary through some synchronous online a setting. But that's what we are seeing right now in the first uh,
Okay, let's
in
talk
the
about
first quarter. Yes, go ahead.
yes, Yusek. Let's talk about the problems. Now, of course, it's only been a week, and as you already mentioned, you will keep adjusting and you will keep addressing
Mm.
the challenges. Connectivity is one, already pointed out by Senator Wynn, already pointed out by Congresswoman Castro. You also pointed it out, and I understand that this is not just, a problem that the Department of Education can address. This is a problem that has to be addressed by our telcos. But setting that aside, I think the main criticism right now, and I think you already know this, what's been going around on social media are the errors in the learning modules. So, can you explain to us why we are seeing all these errors in the learning
Mhm.
modules? And in connection with that as well, during my interview with Congresswoman Castro before we went on, she was saying that the modules are mostly worksheets and not really modules. And she was citing an example before we went on the interview. She said that she had tutored a grade 5 student, her neighbor, and that the modules, which are essentially just worksheets, did not come with textbooks.
Mm.
So essentially, paano daw po mag-self-learn kung worksheets lang at wala namang kasamang explanation?
Mm. Uh, no, no. I think what she might mean is that the explanatory part or the lesson part might be too thin. I think from her own evaluation, but there is an explanation of the concepts, the knowledge that you need to have, followed by a number of questions. Usually, there is a like a pre-test of what you already know, and then there are lessons embedded into that corresponding to the competencies that are being discussed, and after that are some exercises that the students can test their knowledge. But there is an explanation, and probably what Congresswoman Castro might be uh, uh, making a comment on is probably her judgment that this is a very thin conceptual input or knowledge input. And I agree with her. And in fact, that's being done. Is that the textbooks should be distributed as well to the learners, and that's what we know. In other words, there is the textbooks and the accompanying self-learning modules, and if this is not being distributed 100%, then probably there are certain schools where there is not yet a one-to-one availability of the textbooks to them. But the self-learning modules does have a portion that discusses the concepts and the knowledge portion, and of course we have to evaluate
That's what
whether that is sufficient from a learning standpoint.
Mm-mm. Yes. How about the errors? Because some of the errors are really, really glaring. And
Mm.
and some are saying that, maybe we're just seeing them now because parents are so involved in the education of their kids. But the fear here is that the students might have been learning very wrong concepts in school, even pre-pandemic.
Yeah. Uh, Barnaby, if may I shift to one of my connections? I might get lost just very very quickly, but
Sure.
because it's not coming uh,
Okay.
clearly, but it will still be
Go ahead. Go ahead.
online. Yeah.
Yes. Go ahead, Yusek. Yeah. So, um, obviously, we have that privilege of being able to. I also have another connection,
Yeah.
actually.
Can,
Uh,
yes.
you are.
So I'm back. Okay.
Okay,
This might be better.
I'll repeat my question, Yusek, ano? So yung po kasing, so you already addressed Congresswoman Castro's criticism, pero online, all throughout the week, sobrang dami pong
Mm,
lumalabas na mga errors sa mga
mm,
modules. Some of them funny, some of them very glaringly wrong. Some of them, I understand, are actually private school modules and not DepEd modules. Pero meron po talagang DepEd modules. And
yes.
nakita talaga natin yung lumabas po sa TV na math formula na mali.
Yes, that's
Because
correct.
wala talaga yung denominator na zero, that's
Yeah.
will give you an undefined equation. Uh,
Yeah.
so,
So we all got to review that that concept because of that error. I think that was pointed in the earlier interview by Howie uh, earlier. But you're correct. We are deeply concerned about these errors that are coming out in the process. Of course, uh, again, there is a complex uh, se- steps before a self-learning module comes to use by the Department of Education, from its development to its quality assurance to production and so on. And we this is the first time we issued the most essential learning competencies at about I think April or May, and then that's the time when we started the development. And of course, it's not a single unit that develops this. This was delegated at the development stage by module writers, comprising some are master teachers, some are our education specialists, so not all. And then it goes through a quality assurance level uh, at the region, and then go does another quality assurance level at the central office. So there are centrally quality assured self-learning modules, but because of precisely the time that it requires, we were not able to complete the quality assurance at the central office for all of them, and we allowed that to be augmented by self-learning modules that are developed and quality assured at the only at the regional level. But even at the central office level, yes, there are some errors that come out. It is not in all, but of course, you mentioned that these are glaring and worrisome. And so we have to review and come back to our quality assurance process and see where the failures are. And we have to address them, uh, either, either a people issue or a process issue. And if there's need to complement this with other procedures to ensure that errors are kept to the minimum, if not uh, eradicate this totally, then we will have to do so. The other one is an evaluation of the quality of these learning resources from a learning perspective, and I believe that we will be open to that, and even looking at third parties to help for the evaluation of the quality of these learning resources. So there is a part of it that is a learning process, and a part of it that is addressing it over time, responsibly, decisively, and sustainably, so that this can be uh, uh, kept to the really the minimum, if not totally eradicated. But yes, it is a big concern now, because when the secretary mentioned that it was a milestone to have been able to open the school year, that's turning a page or a chapter, and the next chapter is to ensure that learning process happens, or learning actually happens from the time we open the school year to the end of this school year. And of course, we have to deal with these issues and challenges throughout the school year.
So you acknowledge the mistakes and you seem to be receptive to criticism. So you're okay with people online continue pointing out these errors and mistakes in the learning modules, because there was a news item about a regional director of DepEd. I think it was Region 7. And he was saying, if you have complaints about the learning modules, take them directly to DepEd offices. Don't put them on Facebook.
Well, I think what is being reacted to probably is and I understand that personally, not on the part of the Department of Education, but that's the communication milieu or environment that we have, and of course, these are being shared not in official platforms, but in sometimes personal platforms, and so therefore it's you get all kinds, from a constructive criticism to a lock, stock, and barrel judgment over the entire thing. So we get all of this, and I think it's up to the Department of Education to be able to respond to this, as I mentioned, as responsibly and as sustainably and effectively as we can. And so I think if we're able to keep this to the bare minimum, and if those things would show, then there's not much to put out there. So I think that the challenge is on the department, and certainly we will respond, because the secretary has actually gone into a direction of really pivoting from access to quality. And that's really our concern right now, the quality of education, which is clearly the most serious challenge for the education system in the Philippines.
Ang tingin niyo po ba medyo minadali? You already mentioned na kaya siguro may mga errors dun sa mga learning modules is because of the short time to prepare.
No, but we have no choice. In other words, it is not in the discussion within DepEd of freezing education. We have been very consistent from the beginning that we have to be able to provide safe learning opportunities for our students. So that's why, as early as April, we already developed the learning continuity plan. In fact, I would say that we are among the first sectors that put together a continuity plan as early as that, and this has been presented uh, through stakeholders with inputs from them within DepEd, and and Congress, and also the president and the cabinet, and local governments. And in fact, wherever you go, I mean, the learning continuity plan is pretty much a socialized within the department and even outside of the department. So I think it is a we were compelled uh, to be able to make such a preparation, and I think that that is what the secretary was referring to on October 5. Now, the learning process has to continue, and we have to make the adjustments along the way, including the correction of errors, not just as we see them, but improving the process so that these are kept at the minimum. And we're doing this on a rolling basis because not all the learning resources have been prepared for all quarters. In other words, we are through with the first quarter, we are nearly through with the second quarter, but there's still the third and fourth quarters where we are still in the development stage. In fact, we might be looking at the participation of the private publishing industry for the third and fourth quarter. So it's not late in the day. Rather than try to perfect it and delay and delay and delay the school year, we were really wanting to be able to commence the school year. In fact, we that's already quite a number of months that we have been delayed because uh, normally it starts on the first Monday of June, and now we're October 5.
So 1 week of school, you've already identified some problems, and you've already said that you are going to learning modules, of course, which is something that has gotten major attention. But I'm sure you've seen other problems as well. So based on the problems that you've seen so far during the 5 days of school this week, what other adjustments are you seeing that you can do? And are you willing to adopt suggestions, for example, from officials in the national government and our lawmakers? So, for example, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian suggesting roving teachers. For example, Vice President Lenny Robredo suggesting face-to-face classes in low-risk areas. So these are just a couple of examples.
Yes, yes, certainly. The limited face-to-face is something that the secretary herself has already presented to the president. But the public health is not is not for the DepEd alone to decide, and so we will have to consult the other agencies and all the way to the president on the public health aspect. On the curriculum and instruction and learning resources and pedagogy aspects, certainly we're not a closed organization with respect to that. We're consulting everyone. But let me just note that we are looking at the this episode or this phase in in the education system, not merely as an emergency measure, but there are really a lot of the things that are happening now that are transformational, necessary transformations for the educational system that will be staying with us even beyond the COVID. And these are exactly certain things that we are lagging behind that have been fast tracked by a compelling circumstance. And I mean there use of technology, use of blended learning, the reimagination of the learning space, not just in the physical classroom, but including the homes and community spaces and the virtual space, the greater development of skills for self-learning, which is what is needed in the present circumstance where you have access to knowledge and information through technology and information technology. So these are things that an education system must have, and in fact, we're able to fast track transformation because of this compelling circumstance. So it's not all. We're not looking at. Yes, there are challenges, but we are also looking at this from a transformation perspective.
But at the same time, would you agree that what we are seeing right now are actually problems that have been long in our education system? So, for example, the quality of our teaching in public schools, and for example, yung mga modules, things that parents probably don't see or did not see pre-pandemic because hindi naman sila ganun ka involved.
Yeah.
Yung pala, I'm not saying na ganun pala, pero it's possible na mali na pala yung mga natututunan ng mga bata noon pa.
Not all, because I think there's also needs to be a sense and level of proportion here. In other words, yes, you're correct that that is there, and it needs to be addressed, and we are going to address that. And you're correct also that which we look at positively, we're able to recover now greater instructional partnership and responsibility of households and parents in the learning process of their children. What before might have been already fully delegated to the school system, except for certain families. So, y- yes, you're correct. It's a part of making the education system more accountable. Is for everyone to look at it, and our only request is to have some sense of proportion as well, and also look at the context, and uh, also balance criticism with a constructive intervention, because I think that is one major challenge that we have at this time, especially in the time of pandemic, is in the communication side. It's faster, but I would say not as deeply uh, deliberated as they need to. But everyone forms an opinion very quickly. Or not, I'm not complaining, but I'm saying that is the reality of the communication side. And I think there needs to be responsibility both ways as well if we want the education system to transform positively from out of this episode.
So, I mean, you mentioned parent involvement, right? So, how is the Department of Education helping parents as well? Because, as we know, not all parents of public school students, of course, are going to be as educated, as maybe as their older children. And then how are you also helping teachers uplift their quality of teaching? Because we've already have we've had studies wherein it showed that teachers in our public schools are not up to par. There was a World Bank study that showed that more than half of the questions that teachers answered, they were not able to answer correctly. And now they're shifting to another mode of teaching, which is online and presented with other challenges. So how is the DepEd helping in that respect?
Well, on your first question on the parents, it is actually a misconception to think that the parents need to instruct the students on their learning process, and that's why it's called a self-learning module. What we want is to really develop the skill for self-learning, the learning to learn, and being able to use various learning resources, textbook, the self-learning modules, and if they have a capacity for research connectivity, that they are able to do that as well to help their learning process. But that skill is not evenly developed among the students, and that is where you need instructional guidance, and that is where also the problem or a bottleneck arises if that is not if the household is not able to provide it, or no member of the family is able to provide it. But otherwise, the role of the parents, especially if there's already a high degree of skill for self-learning, is one is to motivate the children to do their the work, provide a learning space that is conducive to learning within a household setting, regardless of the level, and to communicate with the teachers for feedback mechanism, because that's very much needed. So that's a big part of the role that should be standard. But with respect to the instructional aspect, then it will be various levels. It's good if they can provide instructional partnership with the teacher, but if they can't, then that is where third-party solutions may be resorted to, whether in the community, co-parents, things like that. And that are actually happening on the ground. Sometimes it's siblings, sometimes it's cousins learning together. So they have a one common mechanism, as I've seen on the ground, are there are group chats that involves both the students and some parents or guardians. So it's a community setting for learning that is happening. It's there will be those that will fall through the cracks here, but that's also the same in classroom setting. I mean, it's not all the same, even in a face-to-face learning environment. On your next question on the teacher quality, we have pre-COVID already embarked on the transformation of our National Educators Academy of the Philippines. We're integrating our pre-service, in-service training component. It has served us well for this pandemic, this institutional reform. We are evaluating all the training programs rather than making it as it used to be, a very fragmented trainings that's not even properly captured in terms of data. So those are happening in the Department of Education precisely because of the shift in the focus to quality of education. We're about to have, for example, a memorandum of agreement with the Philippine Normal University for cross uh, recognition or accreditation of in-service professional development uh, and other programs leading to graduate degrees. So those are happening in the Department of Education even pre-COVID. But as I mentioned, those reform areas are helping us very well in this challenging time.
All right, one final question. How are you ensuring the safety of our teachers? We've had stories about teachers distributing modules and getting infected with COVID. There's news about 10 teachers in Isabela getting infected with COVID just very recently. So, how is the Department of Education addressing this?
As early as February, we already put in place a COVID-19 task force within the department with expressions from the central office down the line. We have actually been monitoring our COVID situation with our teachers and learners and personnel. We have it on record. We're analyzing where the transmissions are coming from. There are instances like Isabella that there may have been, or there were actually some breaches in the preventive precautionary aspect. One of the teachers here got exposed to a neighbor, had a rapid test which tested negative, and because she was not symptomatic, went to had exposed the others, and of course after the exposure and having a positive test, then we go through the management. So those in other words, we have a system in place for both risk mitigation and management aspect. It's done in partnership and in coordination with health authorities uh, nationally and locally, and with LGUs, because these are concerns also of local government units. We are about to download funds for our health standards. We have an alternative work arrangement that is in place in the department, but as we see, uh, there are breaches still that happen, and it's the nature of this COVID-19. In our monitoring of those that are positive, the biggest one is exposure to relatives, and so it's in home setting sometimes that the the risks become
Mhm.
high.
So
So
one.
we're managing it right now, uh, and we have a mechanism to manage the situation.
I'm sorry, but just one final question and just real quick. So, this type of blended learning that the Department of Education is implementing right now, how long can this be sustained? Because we've heard the Education Department say that it's costly to print the modules, and we have public school teachers already spending their own money printing the modules, and we have connectivity issues. And I think there was a suggestion to probably by the third quarter of the school year to stop, um, printing modules for NCR schools, and then shift to pure online learning for NCR schools. But we all know, of course, that it, it's you're in NCR, but you don't necessarily have good connection in NCR. So how long can this be sustained if the pandemic goes on for, let's say, 6 more months to 1 more year?
As I mentioned earlier, we look at this as investment also with the future of education. In fact, some many facets of what we're doing now will stay with us even post pandemic. There are cumulative aspects about this. In other words, for example, uh, the production of learning resources in terms of both content, uh, and some of these are reusable learning resources for the succeeding one. If we're able to increase the intensity of the digital format, even offline, as gadgets come in, and so on. So, in other words, there's a cumulative component of this that we should see also as investments. These are not just recurring expense, but some of these are as I mentioned, in the investment form. So it's not always one sided. Yes, there will be uh, one thing that has come to fore as a cost center now is obviously communications, replacing certain other things. Of course, as you mentioned, some of that, the resolution is outside of the Department of Education because it's an infrastructure issue in telecoms. But I believe that the country has to resolve this in the near term. I think there is no, there are trade-offs, and there is no one-sided response, no impact, and it's up to us to make it swing more to the positive side, and try to mitigate the negative aspects of this. But overall, my sense is that a lot of things that are happening are transformational for the education, and many of them are long overdue, actually.
All right, we're gonna have to end the discussion there. Thank you so much for joining us on this Saturday evening, Attorney and Undersecretary of the Department of Education, Nepomuceno Malaluan. And of course, thank you so much to everyone who tuned in to this episode of Viewpoint. Do catch us every Saturday at 6 in the evening on the Facebook page of Now You Know Philippines. Again, my name is Barnaby Lo. This is Viewpoint. Now you know.